Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where I have to say, as far as this story is concerned, I have no idea how this is going to affect us. I can't even spitball what my opinion will be. I just kind of think it is an interesting story in the technology world, with the Trump administration essentially trying to rewrite the global order and our industry by diktat, not going through the legislative process, doing everything by executive order, just like our forefathers wanted. Anyway, so this is curious, and I think this will be important at the end of the day. But how so? I don't know. Right? U.S. plans one-to-one chip production rule to curb overseas reliance. So there's been a big push, again, under the Biden administration and under the Trump administration, for the United States to start making more chips, more computer chips here in the United States. And so basically what this rule is supposed to be is that if a company doesn't want to have tariffs imposed on their silicon that they're importing, that they have to do a 1-to-1 ratio for what is manufactured in the United States and what gets imported, right? So basically, if you import 5 chips from overseas and you don't manufacture anything in the United States, you get like 100% tariff on all 5 of those chips. On the other hand, if you import 5 chips from overseas and you manufacture 5 chips in the United States, then you don't get any tariffs, right? And to be clear, this is my problem with Trump. This is my problem here. At a 3,000 feet view of what's going on, I don't think that's actually a bad deal, right? The idea of trying to require local manufacturing of valuable components, right? Again, if we talk about things from solar cells to batteries or whatever else, the idea being that not everything has to be produced here, but that we should have manufacturing capacity here for if something blows up again. COVID or a war or whatever else. My concern with this is, again, getting into the brass tacks, getting to the actual specifics, right? That's where everything goes to hell, is when you start talking about this, like what does this actually mean, right? Could you import the equivalent of a Xeon chip from, Taiwan, and then manufacture the equivalent of an Atom chip in the United States and say, well, those are 2 chips. That's a 1-to-1. Does that work out? Is that going to go by the rule, right? If you do that, I mean, yes, we are going to retain some capacity, but that's not exactly the global winning strategy I think you would go for. And two, if you think about things like chips, there's so many inputs, everything from the design to the components, engineering, and all of that kind of stuff. Just because you're manufacturing a chip in the United States doesn't mean that fab capacity, that manufacturing capacity, is self-sufficient or self-reliant, right? If you're having outputs coming in from the rest of the world, to make sure that fab can produce chips. Well, if you have COVID again, or if you have a war or whatever else, if those inputs get cut off, then the fab becomes worthless. And this is my problem that I get into with the whole Trump administration. And it's weird, like when I get these people that say Eli has TDS, and that's one of the hard parts for me, is like, no, like, if you actually listen to me, as I've said, and what the fuck, I think NATO should have gone away in 1995. I do believe in reshoring. I do think we need to deal with the southern border and all that kind of stuff. The problem is like the specific ways this guy is going about doing things is just, that is what I think is like so destructive and wonkadoodle. And I don't think it gets us to where we need to be going. But anyways, from Reuters, U.S. plans 1-to-1 chip production rule to curb overseas reliance. The U.S. is planning to push chip makers to match the volume of semiconductors that their customers currently import from overseas providers through domestic production or pay a tariff. But again, think about that. Volume, right? Does a Raspberry Pi chip Is that equivalent to a Xeon chip when you're doing a thing like volume? President Donald Trump has doubled down on his efforts to reshore semiconductor manufacturing, offering exemptions from tariffs of roughly 100% on chips to firms that produce domestically. Companies that fail to sustain a 1-to-1 domestic to import ratio over time would face tariffs. The U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick floated the idea with semiconductor executives, telling them it might be necessary for economic security, the journal said. I love how they say, like, they float this with the executives. Like, hey, executives, I just have this idea here. I have this idea. What if, I'm going to put it out there, what if we blow up all of your supply chains? You know how you have all these supply chains that you've built up over the past 3 decades? Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just spitballing here. I'm just spitballing. What if we just drop a nuke on those supply chains? Like, how would you feel about that? I don't feel they'd feel very good. I don't think they would feel very good. But anyways, quote, America cannot be reliant on foreign imports for the semiconductor products that are essential for our national and economic security. The newspaper cited White House spokesperson Kush Desi Sane, who added that any reporting about policymaking should be treated as speculative unless officially announced. Under the proposal, a company pledging to make chips in the U.S. would receive credit for the pledged volume, allowing imports without tariffs until the plant is complete, with initial relief to help ramp capacity, according to the report. And this is also the thing, again, with the Trump administration, is they like buzzwords, they like catchphrases, they like things that get headlines and they get clickbait, and then they forget about them. I talk about this with the TikTok executive order. Remember during Trump's last year when he put out an executive order basically trying to ban TikTok? Right. Well, one of the interesting things about that is his administration got so tied up with other things. There was a certain point where TikTok literally had to petition the court because the administration had stopped communicating. It was like the administration had literally forgotten about their case against TikTok. And TikTok was like, we don't know what to do here, right? There's communication that's supposed to be going back and forth. There's documents that's supposed to be going back and forth. And it seems like the Trump administration has kind of forgotten about this whole entire thing, right? I talk about this with the whole Foxconn, right? Foxconn, I think it was in Wisconsin, right? They were supposed to be building this massive, brand new cutting edge factory in Wisconsin using eminent domain. They took land from farmers, have been farming the land for years, the whole 9 yards, because this factory is going to go in there, and this was going to be the resurgence of the United States. And now, who the hell knows what's going on with Foxconn in Wisconsin? Read about it. It's just again, wonkadoodle is the best word. So again, one of the things about this which is interesting is this pledging. Right? I talked about this in one of the previous videos about Apple. Right? So Apple had pledged $500 billion of investment into U.S. manufacturing, and then they upped it. They upped it to $600 billion. It's like, well, how can you be snarky about that, Eli? Well, one of the cornerstones, one of the foundational investments they made was a whopping $2.5 billion into Corning glass. So the glass that goes on the smartphones and all that, they invested $2.5 billion into Corning to say, look, this proves how much we're invested into American manufacturing. And you're like, I mean, that's fine. That's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Like if you just said they invested $2.5 billion into Corning, I'd be like, yay, right? But it's like, you've promised, you've pledged $600 billion. $2.5 billion into Corning literally isn't even 1% of that. It is 1/3% of your overall pledge. So if you're saying this is proof of your intent, it's kind of small proof. And so that's one of the curious things here with this whole idea that these companies, again, the companies are supposed to come, they're supposed to grovel, they're supposed to slobber over the ring of Trump, and then they're supposed to put out pledges. They're supposed to put out things that sound very good for the news cycle and basically will be forgotten by everybody by the next news cycle. And that's where with this, I don't honestly know how much it matters. Right? So they have to pledge for future production. So we get to continue importing at 0% tariff as long as we pledge that in the future we're going to do a 1-to-1 ratio. Again, you've got Trump, you've got the normal American political system, you have everything else going on. What does that actually look like in the real world? Hell if I know. Again, and that's where I say, like with this, it's just kind of like one of those curious stories, like something to keep your eyes on, but what it actually means, right? You know, with the 1-to-1, can that be Xeon to atom processor? Is that a 1-to-1? Yeah, so this will be curious. This will be curious going forward. I think my big concern here would be for any startup companies, any smaller hardware technology companies. So IoT is a big thing now, right? The idea that everything should be connected to the internet, everything should be smart, everything should be AI enabled. My concern with this is with so many of these companies trying to get out of these tariffs. Again, you hear about companies like Apple, right? Okay, Apple is getting out of the tariffs. But can the smaller companies get out of the tariffs? Do the smaller companies even have the money to try to slobber over Trump's ring? And that's one of the things I get concerned about here is I think especially for hardware startups, we might be getting into the world where they can't even buy in to play at the table, to even try to play at the table of where everybody else is playing. And so that could end up being a bad thing at the end of the day. What I dislike about a lot of this, as far as these policies are concerned, is it's all very destructive, right? It's all very tariff. It's all very punishment. I don't see how we're increasing the capacity of STEM educated students in the United States, right? I don't see the multi-billion-dollar investment into making American students the leaders in STEM, right? Take these 100% tariffs on CPUs, drive them directly into high school math programs, right? If I saw something like that, I'd be a little bit more hyped about it, right? Taking these tariffs that are coming in and driving into scholarships, right? You know, as long as you're smart enough to get a STEM degree, the federal government is going to make sure that degree is paid for, right? That's what I don't see. I don't see the capacity building. I see the punish the people that will not submit. I don't see the capacity building for where this manufacturing comes from, where the next generation of employees, where they have the knowledge for this, again, where the building, the factories, industrial zones, zoning, as I've talked about a lot, one of the big issues in the United States is so much of the land that was zoned for industrial uses is now being turned into condos. Right? You know, if you go back 100 years ago, being near the water, that was for poor people and industries, right? So a lot of factories, a lot of warehouses, a lot of that industrial space, that was all around the waterfront. Right? Well, hygiene and healthcare has gotten a lot better. And so now hygiene and healthcare is good. So people want to be around the water. That's considered good. So much of the warehouse space, so much of the factory space is now being turned into condos. And the issue is that's fine, right? Rejiggering where space should be utilized, whatever. But they're not saying, okay, for every acre of land that you remove from industrial zoning, somewhere else you have to zone for industrial. See, we're not seeing that type of thing. If you wanted to spin up massive factories in the United States, there's real questions about where you would do that around population areas and that type of thing. And so that's my thought with all this. Is it's just like, okay, it's something. As with much of what Trump does, I don't really know what it means at the end of the day, but it is something. So what do you think about this? Do you think this is a good thing? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. If you like what I do, give us a thumbs up. If you hate what I do, give us a thumbs down. Leave an amazing comment. Leave a horrible comment. Just be a big dog and do it down there in the comment section. Do you remember SiliconDojo.com exists? We're having our first in-person class We are going to be in Durham, North Carolina, at a place called American Underground. We're going to be having a class using Olama, AI models, Python in order to build simple AI applications. That is going to be on October 8th. So you can go over to silicondojo.com and see what's going on with that. We also have a fireside chat with the founder of a $2 billion cybersecurity company. That is coming up pretty soon. If you're interested in those, go to silicondojo.com. And with that, see y'all later.